Today's workshop is Digital Wellness Series Workshop 1, Building Digital Resilience. I'm excited to introduce Emily Hilliard, VFN Co-Director of Family Support, Help and Grow Digital Skills Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, so I'm very excited to have a chance to share some good tools and tricks because, unfortunately, in this digital revolution, the one thing that gets left behind a lot is that technology comes first and then the education usually comes after. So this is our chance to kind of get together and support each other as families, caregivers, and learn to not only empower our children, specifically our teenagers, as they learn to navigate this digital landscape, but also ourselves as parents who utilize the technology. So here's the goals for today's workshop. It's going to be focused on building digital resilience. We're going to talk about what that means. We're going to talk about the skills and the mindset that is going to help you stay healthy in today's digital world. We're also going to have some interactive discussions as needed and some opportunities to share experiences and questions at the end. And also, I'm going to make sure that you leave with some really helpful resources, some practical tools, some tips, some take-home information that you could have. There is a lot of technology that can help you maintain a healthy relationship and balance with the technology itself. So we'll make sure to touch on some of those as well. Okay, so the focus areas for today's workshop are going to be centered on these three categories. We're going to talk more about coping with online negativities and some of the strategies that you can build. This is going to fight back against the impacts of cyberbullying, comparison, trolling, a lot of other harmful online interactions. And then we're going to share about how to develop healthy tech relationships. And this is really all about, we talk a lot about work-life balance, but what we're talking about here is how to balance all of it with the technology as well. And then also encouraging offline connections, engaging activities, how to drum up more support and get the whole family to unplug. And then when you plug back in, do it in a healthy way. Okay, so time for a very quick informal poll. You're going to see three emojis on your screen right now. We have a heart emoji, we have a rocket ship, and we have a balloon. And so one of the things that I like to do is just to start out with how you feel about your family's relationship with technology right now. If you feel like it's great, things are going well, you love technology and technology loves you back, you can throw a heart emoji. If you feel like you have such a ways to go with this technology balance, like you need a rocket ship to get you there, you can use the rocket ship emoji. Or if you feel like, I just need some light support, you can use the balloon. So if you want to take some time and give me a reaction to where you feel you are. Okay. Okay, I'm going to see some balloons. One or two. I see a rocket and a balloon. Okay, good. You're in the right spot. This is a totally judgment-free zone. There's no right or wrong answers. Frankly, we all need a rocket ship right now because technology is going fast and furious. So I'm glad that you're here. So let's talk about digital resilience. What does it actually mean? Digital resilience is really your ability to kind of navigate and recover not just from challenges around online life, like cyberbullying. Misinformation is a big one around this election season always, but frankly, all the time. And really digital overload. That is a term that is not used that often, but I think we'll see it used more and more these days. Digital resilience is frankly fighting back in a healthy way against the digital overload. And how you do that is by, just like anything else, using muscle memory and building up muscle memory through strength training, right? So building these healthy tech habits, understanding that you can use the technology in a way that supports your well-being. It doesn't have to take away from it. Like it can be both. It actually can be both. At the same time, because what technology does is it works to connect us, frankly, in some authentic ways, but also in some artificial ways. So it's really important to counterbalance that with real world connections. So maintaining offline relationships and activities is actually going to really help build your digital resilience and help you balance that part of your life. And of course, strengthening our family. So building digital resilience, like as a family unit, supporting one another and creating an environment where we can all thrive and kind of fight back against some of the more negative aspects of our digital culture today. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about coping with the online negativity, because this tends to be the number one thing that comes up for families and caregivers when it comes to teens in particular on their devices all the time. So much pressure that's happening right now on social media, lots of comparisons, lots of updates leading to feelings of inadequacy. And as we all know, it's such a tough time already. Middle school, I was just reading a statistic where most parents are purchasing phones for their children at the age of 11. Starting at 11. That's actually not recommended by experts, but that's just what the statistics are. So it's even more important for you to understand what those phones are bringing into your home. And social media is the number one source for pressures, comparisons, and it can actually have such a negative impact on our mental health that the number one way that we can fight back is just by being aware of it. So talking about cyberbullying, messages that you're going to get online that can be very distressing, it's going to be really important, just like we teach our kids now, to speak up against bullying behavior, tell an adult about bullying behavior. The same thing happens in our digital world, but we have to do a better job of educating our children and our loved ones about what to look out for. Negative comparisons goes back into social media pressures. We want to make sure that we are teaching our family members and our loved ones about not getting caught up with what we're seeing online. And it's really good advice for us too, as parents, to make sure that we're modeling a lot of the behavior that we share with our children. We want them to see. And here's a big one that I kind of referenced earlier: information overload. Anybody in the room heard the term algorithm? Knowing what that means, that is a tech term. An algorithm is basically what the tech companies or the designers of social media, it's their recipe book for how they keep you engaged. And they design social media to keep you on social media because that is how they get you to see the advertisements. There's a lot working against you, and it's perfectly fine for you to share about algorithms and the way that these platforms are designed to your children so that they know what to look for. Much like we should teach our children how to spot misinformation, we should also teach our kids about how these devices can be manipulating them and they're not aware of when it's happening. So making sure to share about that term information overload and what that means. There's something that social media companies have gotten in trouble for a lot in Europe, and that is the continual feed, what they call the infinite loop. When we get on our devices, it's just this never-ending feed. It never stops. In Europe right now, they actually have limitations on that. And that is something that the tech companies are fighting very hard against not implementing here in the United States. I hope that changes personally, but that is something that we want to make sure we're sharing with ourselves. We need to be educated on that part of the design, and we also need to educate our children about that part of the design. So how do we fight back against something like that? All of these tools being designed to keep us engaged. It's about taking the time to schedule regular tech breaks. And also, you can curate this algorithm. It doesn't have to be what the tech companies design it to be. You have a role to play in that. Whenever you are liking something or not liking something, they have built-in features now that can help you curate your content so you can include more uplifting content that you want to see. And that is also something you should share with your loved ones so that they can make sure that they understand that that is how it works. Okay. So what do we do if, despite our very best efforts, we've talked to our children, We've talked to ourselves about these algorithms, and we've talked about what to look for with misinformation. What are some coping skills that we can use when we have faced online negativity? Because despite our very best intentions, it's going to happen, especially if we're on social media. So what can we do? The first thing we need to do is we just need to take a moment and pause. We just need to pause. We need to share these coping skills with our children. We need to make sure that they understand that they can check in with themselves. A lot of times when we're on these devices, we get so sucked in that we are not consciously aware of how they're impacting our emotions until much later. I think as parents, we've all had the experience of being on our computer, being on our phone, and all of a sudden you get off of your phone and you're just completely drained. You're emotionally drained. The way that social media is designed is the scroll might include kind of what somebody made for dinner the other day, and then all of a sudden some really life impacting serious grief could be shared in the very next post. That's a lot for us to take in emotionally, that pendulum that can swing when you're just checking your Facebook. I think it's really important for us to not only be responsive to how that content is impacting our own emotional state, but share with our kids and our loved ones, hey, how is this making you feel? When you get off of your phone, how do you feel? When you see something like this, check in with yourself. How is this impacting you? How did you feel 5 minutes ago when you weren't on your phone, as opposed to now when you've been on your phone for 5 minutes? Getting them and ourselves into that habit is really important. And when they're reading something that feels uncomfortable, have them check in with themselves. How would this feel if you said this in person? If you're reading something that you would feel uncomfortable saying to a friend face to face, this is a good way for you to gauge whether you shouldn't do it online. These are all skills that we really have to talk about. We have to normalize these discussions with our children, because they will otherwise learn how to interact in a digital world without our advice and without our support. And that can be very unhealthy and can get there very quickly. The other thing that I think is really important is to remember that when our loved ones are engaging with social media, we have to get them to remember that, is this engagement worth the negativity? Is this the best use of your time? And a lot of times I've gotten asked questions before. Teenagers build community online. Everybody's discussing and sharing and wanting to have conversations, but those conversations can quickly turn negative. And frankly, a lot of times it's not something that the kids are aware has turned negative until much later. And so just building up these skills slowly by slowly to get them to check in with themselves and understand the impact of what they're reading. As a parent, there's a couple things that you can do. If you feel like your child is not to that point where they can recognize they're still building their tool set, they're still building out what to look for, there's some very powerful ways that you can fight back. Screenshot any harmful content. And I'm going to talk a little bit more later about some tools that are out there to help you do this. But go ahead and feel empowered to always screenshot anything that you feel like is negative. You have access to do that, and you should. And then again, blocking features that are on phones, muting, make sure that you're well aware of what your feed looks like for your teen. Make sure that your eyes are on all of the things that their eyes are on. And then again, reminding them that they have a role to play in the curation of their own content, and that they can amplify or decrease that content themselves. Also, building supportive networks are really important. Doing stuff like this, where you're continually educating yourself around these features, around this content, talking with other parents. What do your phone rules look like? Getting comfortable, being uncomfortable around these conversations is the best way that you can protect not only yourself, but your family around these digital devices and their impacts. So, healthy tech relationships. What they don't look like is when you have difficulty, and this is for the parents too. I know this is kind of a tough topic to talk about, but when it's difficult for us to disconnect from our devices, if we feel, especially those of us who, and my present company included, feel like we always have to check devices to stay up to date with things at work, really important to recognize when you're having difficulty disconnecting, So when you feel like you are compelled to constantly check your device, you feel like you're having a lack of self-control, screen time, it can be an unhealthy attachment to technology. It's good for you to recognize that, share that with your loved ones. Sleep issues, this is a more well-known issue. The blue light from digital screens can disrupt sleep patterns and lead to insomnia, which can have an overall impact on your well-being. That's why the recommended advice is don't even take your phones into your bedroom, leave them in a totally different room. Keep the digital devices away from any sleeping spaces is always good, solid advice. Mood changes. This is something that you can start to notice in your child probably before they do. Look for the negative emotions. Anxiety, is irritability increasing from excessive use? And this just doesn't have to be social media. This can be games. This can be iPads. This can even be quote unquote the good apps, the healthy apps. It's a balance. It's going to be a constant work on balance and decreased focus. That constant stream of digital stimulation, it makes it harder for all of us, and especially our children, to concentrate on tasks or frankly, hang on to meaningful conversations. So healthy tech relationships don't have these features in them. What you can do to fight back is a couple things. And these are just some real practical family rules that have been found to work successfully. So you'll see a picture here on your screen, a bunch of stacked up phones. This is the common tactic called the phone stack. And at meal times, if you could just have everyone stack their phones in the center of the table and just kind of push it aside, what it does is it triggers you to mentally and physically disengage with your device. Put your device away and take the focus off of your device and onto your family or whoever is sitting around the table at the time. It's a great habit to get into. Younger the better, especially when they first get their phones. It's a real critical time for you to establish family rules. Also, something called a sunset switch, which is a device curfew of sorts. Just like when we would have phones, you can't talk to your friends on the phones after a certain amount of time. It's time to really disengage and start to focus on sleeping. Getting into the habit, not only for our children, but also for ourselves, powering off all the screens, I would say a little well before bedtime, to promote healthy sleep and make that a priority as a family, is really healthy. And here's something that a lot of families are hesitant to put into place, including myself, but I've heard it's a very good idea. Tech-free Tuesday. Doesn't have to be a Tuesday. Dedicate one day a week as a tech-free time for the family to reconnect through other activities. This is honestly easier to do for my family on Sunday. But it is something that we have done, and it has been difficult at first, but it has also been really fun. Charging stations. This is kind of an interesting but a valuable tip. Create a central location to charge all your devices. Again, keeping them out of the bedrooms, encouraging responsible use is really important. Just get everybody into those healthy habits at the beginning, so you aren't having this person using their phone here and this person using their phone here. It really does help. And the reason why that helps is because what you're doing is you're acting out boundaries. You're acting out boundaries around the devices so that the devices don't get to dictate your time. And they are actually designed to do that. So we have a lot to fight back when it comes to that. So a couple things that we can do besides the phone stacking and making a tech-free day is device-free times. So establishing tech-free zones, just like we did at the meal table, and times for the family to connect without distractions is going to be really important. Just setting that boundary for yourself, setting the boundary for your family is going to go a long way. Some families have followed the ways of the schools and created a family tech agreement and have had a lot of success with this. This may or may not work for your family, but you can find these pretty easily online. You can just do a Google search for a standard family technology agreement. And this is very popular to do when kids are getting their first phones. And what this does is it provides a way for everybody to sit down and have a good conversation around acceptable usage. What apps can you use? What are the times? And like actually having the conversation before you share the phone is really helpful. And then, of course, one of the things that has come up a lot more now is parental controls. There actually are more than ever now, and this is the good news, more parental control features to help you manage the screen time. So it's not you versus this huge tech monolith like it feels like all the time. You do have some tools that you can utilize, and it will help ensure safe online environments, safer, I should say, online environments for children. So a couple things to remember. What about offline connections? Why would we talk about this when we're really talking about our online connections? It's because what this does is it reinforces the balance. These digital tools are healthiest when they also foster the offline connections. So they go together, developing in-person communication skills, crucial for healthy social development. And when we're talking to our children about this, we can help them understand that when they're looking at their devices, that this is something that it doesn't have to impair social development, but it can block it. And how we fight back against that is through connecting offline. So offline activities, in addition to online activities, hobbies can keep kids active. Promoting all of that in addition to letting them have their devices is going to be the best way for you to be able to support your family. Face-to-face interactions, we all know how much that boosts our mood and reduces stress and anxiety compared to just sole digital connections. It's another thing to kind of share and be honest, and with not only with you as a parent and how that affects your own mental well-being when you're on these devices for a long time, but also sharing that with your kids and your loved ones. Spending quality time together in the real world, it deepens family and friend bonds. There's just nothing like it. And while some of our connections can be fostered digitally, they can be enhanced offline. And I think that's just an important connection for us to always share, not only with ourselves, but also with our families. Normalizing it. It's about finding the balance and normalizing that it's a difficult process to do so. So how can we get started on that? A couple ways. Family activity ideas. I'm sure a lot of these are already incorporated in our family life right now, but just as a friendly reminder, especially when the seasons change, winter is on the way, it's very easy to not go outside as much, but something as simple as evening walks, board game nights, we have puzzle nights in our family, reading time, all these are really good ways to bond as a family. It's not something you need to do every day, but you could do that on your tech-free day. Find something that you love and discuss it as a family. Have the whole family buy into this. The whole idea is connecting over correcting. That's really important when it comes to these digital devices, because there is a great deal of autonomy that the devices are really encouraging kids to have. And so as a family, when you're encouraging more bonding, there can be some inherent friction, but that's why it's important to include everybody in the family on these discussions and make it of group interest, understanding what everybody finds to be meaningful and enjoyable. And then you can all plan these activities together so that everybody looks forward to doing so, and getting creative, because you're going to have some family members who have different interests, differing abilities. Getting creative and sharing. The idea is just to share. And you can share the challenges and you can share the joys and you can do it together. Also, rotating responsibilities. This is another fun way to kind of get your kids to buy into it. Have your family members plan something. Oh, it's Tech-Free Sunday. That means it's Luke's turn to pick all the activities for the day. What would you like to eat, down to the food? Something like that. Getting them to foster a love for connecting offline is really important. Okay, so a lot of times when I'm teaching this class in person, I get a lot of questions about the what ifs, right? Or the fight backs, or, my child is just really struggling to get off the device. I find that it's the only thing that causes us to argue. There's a couple, that's very common to have that challenge, a lot of pushback, because again, these devices are designed to engage. They are designed to keep you focused on just your screen through all sorts of wonderful, magical ways. And it's very tough as a parent to compete with your board game. compared to Minecraft. But what you can do is you can set these limits. You can compromise in a healthy way. For example, built-in timers, so it takes the onus off of you. You can have even a timer app that will help. So it's not about what the kiddo wants. It's not about what you as a parent want. It's the timer. We're going to set the timer. Something visual for some kids works really well, but it's really important to stick to that boundary and involve the kid in setting up those agreements. Again, making it a communal effort is the only way for these boundaries to really stick. And then here we go again with the comparison, right? Well, everybody else can do it. My friend Johnny gets to do Fortnite for 5.5 hours. Why can't I? Right? All of those kind of things. Expect that, be prepared for that, and learn to compromise and share honestly about why that isn't something that works for you or why that isn't something that's healthy for your family. Again, engaging in the conversation respectfully and just sharing about what these devices are designed to do and how your priority is really making sure that not only your kiddo can engage with digital technology in a healthy way, but you as a parent struggle and are working on it too. I think that's really important, and we just don't talk about it enough. So how do we do all of these wonderful things? Well, we just start small. We don't need to tackle any of this in a very big way. This is a very intimidating thing to try to tackle all at once. And I encourage you to just start small, one change to focus on first, whether that's moving all the charges to one room or perhaps making sure that mealtime stays a tech-free zone. One small healthy change at first is going to be the best way to get you going. Again, I've talked about this a lot, but it's really important because it won't be successful unless you involve everyone. We have to get the whole family on board and committed to changing and getting a healthier tech balance into our life so that we can build this digital resiliency. Like any new routine, it's going to be consistency that really helps it to stay healthy. Until you make it a habit, keep going and track your progress. It's something that there will be mistakes, there will be changes. That's okay. Go back to step one, starting small, and you'll get there. And adjust as needed. Kids are going to get sick. They'll want to be on their devices more. Okay, adjust and adapt. That's what we do as parents the whole time anyway. So just know that building digital resilience, it takes time, it does take effort, involve the whole family. Start small and you're going to create those lasting positive changes. Without a doubt, you're going to see it. So if you're looking for some more resources and support, I actually have some apps and I have some more resources I'm going to show on the next slide. But this is just something that I think, and I can always send these out too if anybody is interested, digital wellness plans, where you can kind of customize your own plan. And this is based on your tech agreement, if you wanted to have a family tech agreement, an activity planner where you just kind of have a weekly guide to scheduling your offline activities to where the focus is on the offline and the quality time. Progress tracking, this is a tool that can monitor your digital well-being. You can kind of celebrate the wins here and there. And then, of course, doing stuff like this, where you're connecting with other families and you're encouraging other families as they navigate this digital resilience challenge. Because every family, whether they talk about it or not, is affected by this in some way. And I think we can always start there. In our family life, we've asked around to close friends, do you have phones? If you have phones, what social media apps are you allowing your kids to know? It helps us to kind of get a lay of the land, to know what kind of things our kiddos are interacting with, even if they don't have their own phones. It's nice to know what other families are going through and what has worked for them. Talk about it. I think it's one of the things where we need to do a little bit normalization because everybody is affected for sure. Okay, so apps and tools I've listed here on the screen. The main ones that you can use for Android phones is called Family Link. And then if you have an Apple phone, Screen Time, these function in the same way in that they help you to kind of do a lot of the hard work where you're setting up the limits and the downtime. You can also monitor accessibility to certain apps, restrictions around time, restrictions on YouTube specifically. There's a lot that these particular apps can help you create your own plan actually on the device. And then you can, in addition to those, also get something like a family time app. And what this does, and this is really interesting, this will actually track screen time. So not only does it filter the content, but it gives you some data, and you can use this to kind of build up your own digital resilience plan to see when is it that as a family we tend to be engaged with our devices. Where can we support ourselves more? Really hard to do that if you don't actually have the data to know where to start. So that's a great tool. I highly recommend that. Of course, Common Sense Media, they do a really good job of helping you understand what apps are actually appropriate for what audiences. So that's a great resource as well. I always like to include, whenever we're talking about stuff as serious as cyberbullying, I really want to mention that there's an entire hotline. This is how normal these issues are for families nowadays. There is a cyberbullying hotline that is set up that will provide immediate support and guidance. Always a good number for you to have on hand. Of course, mental health support as well, 24/7. There's a lot of online safety resources. Stopbullying.gov is a great resource, and they have a specific section just covering digital safety concerns. So I encourage all parents to go there and read through the material. Even if it's not applicable to you and your family at this point, it's really good information for you to have on hand for any young child that you love and support. And then, of course, local counseling. Consulting with your child's school counselor, searching for a therapist in your area to help provide some extra support. This is a really big topic, and it is a really big barrier for families, and there's a lot of really big support that is out there as well. So I want you to feel hopeful about that. Okay, so what are next steps? This is a good time for you to just, if you don't want to complete a family plan, you can at least think through a family plan. Think through a family plan. What does healthy digital life as a family, what does that look like? Just spend some time thinking about what you want your family life to look like around these devices. Do you feel like they're kind of running the house a little bit more than you're comfortable with? Choose a change, set a date, spend some time really thinking about this. And then think about regular check-ins to kind of review your progress and your family's progress. Again, include everybody in this progress and make adjustments. There's also some families find that they need some extra support around this. There's Facebook groups designed specifically around parenting in a tech world. I think that is actually the name of the group, Parenting in a Tech World, on Facebook, one of the more popular ones. And what this does is it's a support group that can really get down to the details that parents find helpful. Like, I see this specific emoji. I caught this on my child's text. What does this mean? Is there some hidden meaning? What, help me help myself. Those kind of resources are out there and available. So again, just thinking through initial first steps. That's a great way to start building your family's digital resilience. Okay, and we've got a lot of follow-up workshops. I'll have to make sure I include those in our resources. Questions and discussions time. We can address concerns, you can share experiences, and we can clarify strategies. And that's something that we can also take offline today as well. Couple reminders left for you is that small steps matter. Remember that building digital resilience is definitely a journey. And any kind of small change that you can make now, it will undoubtedly have a positive impact in the long run and the short term. So this is all about progress over perfection. Don't get discouraged if you don't see immediate results. There's nothing more challenging than having challenges with your kiddos, and it does take time. So please remember celebrating those small wins, because there will be some, and there will be several more coming up, is really important. And that this is not something that needs to be lonely. There's a lot of support out there, a lot of support and guidance and encouragement. that's available. So many families like yours are navigating these digital challenges, and we're all kind of going through this together. So I think it's really good for us to all remember that we can start there. And that is my presentation. So I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Emmy. That was amazing information. We do have, feel free if anyone has a question to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. I did see one question already come in. Can you say more about how to curate a positive feed algorithm? How to game the system?
Okay, great question. So what these algorithms are doing is it's basically a digital alchemy. They know so much more about us as users than we would ever be comfortable with them knowing. They understand that perhaps we're looking for recipes that have chicken in them and not pork, and that we think cat videos are funnier than dog videos, or that we like the silk shirt, but we're only going to look at it if it's actually on sale. I mean, it's uncomfortable how much information they really know. But how do they know that information? Because we give it to them. Here's something that we don't like to think about, but we are freely giving all this information away to them by our little likes. It's designed to look very cutesy and fun, but they're gauging on how much time we spend on articles if we see something that's really interesting. So for example, you'll notice this if you click on a wellness article, maybe it's about the benefits of turmeric, and all of a sudden 2 hours later you have advertisements for the newest, latest, greatest turmeric supplement. How do they know that? Because we kind of tell them. So being really well aware of what you're spending time on, or if there's something that you want to see more of, go ahead and hit the like button, or do a search actually in your feed, and you'll see more of that content popular. And what you don't want to do, and it's really hard to do, especially now in our election season, is if we kind of get into some of these more nefarious stories, all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is how we can keep this person engaged. They really get angry when they see more stories about this particular candidate, not this particular candidate. All of a sudden you start seeing more and more and more of that, because you're teaching the app how to engage with you. So being very mindful of what you're liking, or if you see something that you don't want to see more of, press the don't like button. Or there's also usually in the corner there, the three little dots. I can't think of what it actually is, but it actually is a little button that says, I don't want to see this anymore, or don't show this to me anymore. Utilize those tools. They actually don't want to show you information that you don't like. They just really want you to be on information that will keep you staying on that device. So that's really important. I've also done a search too for like topics of interest to me. So for example, my son is very into cartooning, so I'll search for cartooning in Vermont. And so I'll see some of that populate my feed. Or, my other son is very much into soccer. So I liked a big soccer star, Messi. I liked his post. And so you can actually think about playing a part in this alchemy. Throw in your own little touch. This is your recipe to make. You like more cinnamon in this part, and so you throw it in there. That's a really good thing for you to know, because it empowers you to push more of the content that you want to see. Because if you're going to be on there, hopefully it's pleasant. That's the idea, to check in. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Emmy. Another thing I was trying to think about is, what are some of the benefits of social media? And, we know the dangers, but how can it be helpful in our lives?
So this is great. I absolutely love talking about this, because it's a good counterbalance, because I think oftentimes we think of social media as just, it's a monolith for sure. And there is a lot of negative connotations, but there's also, frankly, some really positive connotations. Again, it's all about the balance and what you make of it. For example, there's a really heartwarming story that I think just got turned into a Netflix movie. There was a young adult who was not able to have full mobility, and so he created this whole world in something called World of Warcraft, which is a video game. And I mean, he spent hours because, of course, he was unable to do a lot of activity. He spent hours building out these worlds in World of Warcraft. He created these friends, like true blue friendships that were accessible to him. And these were powerful friendships, powerful connections. It lasted 10, 15 years, something like that. I mean, there's really wonderful, wholesome pockets that are out there. Again, it's just making sure that balance, just like anything else, there's ways for it to quickly go south, and there's ways for it to be really wonderful and really wholesome. It's just a matter of how you use it. How do you use the tool? But I really appreciate the question. It's also another wonderful way for kids, or even parents in particular, to take deep dives into topics of interest. That's another way that some of the social media can be very supportive, in that, for example, if you love, maybe you really have a passion for cooking with lychee, or you're a big tea fanatic, and there's just not a lot of friends that are into your tea habits, you can foster a love of tea online, and you can get some really great ideas that way. So looks like I have another question.
I can read it for you if you'd like, Emmy.
Yes, please.
What if I notice that my teenager's mood is changing after a lot of digital engagement, doom scrolling? But when I point it out to them, they say they are not interested in changing their digital habits. How can I encourage them to change their algorithm to become a more positive one?
That's a great question. The honest truth is there's only so much of that you can control. But I think what I would encourage you to do is maybe share your own feed. Share your own feed and look, this is stuff that I really enjoy. I love learning more about this. I really, if I'm going to spend the time on this, I want it to be something productive, and also pointing out, hey, I like you said, noticing in a gentle, thoughtful way, hey, I feel like you're a little bit more upset after spending this much time. Getting them into that conversation, for example, far, far away from technology, is one of my number one pieces of advice, because it's really difficult to engage in that conversation, literally even around the device, like a car ride, or a walk in the woods, or somewhere where they can really get, I mean, the amount of influence that device has, even if it's in the same room, is really astonishing. And so, like, really full on separation from the device before engaging in a conversation around the device is always really important. That's a great way to start. And then emphasizing about how much the tech companies actually control and manipulate what is on that screen is another really good way to go. Because a lot of times I have found that when teens know more about how companies are manipulating them, they're unhappy with that. I think as humans, most of us don't like to be manipulated. And I feel like when most people are empowered with the knowledge of how these algorithms work, there's a great Netflix show called, it's actually a movie, and I highly recommend it, especially for teenagers and young adults to watch, because it dives deep into all of the manipulation and the marketing that goes in trying to keep teens engaged. And I would highly recommend, I'll get you that movie title. I don't have it off the top of my head, but let them learn more about what they're seeing and how it's designed to be seen. That would be a good place to start.
So, Emmy, I had a question.
Mhm.
So, given that perhaps, I'm not sure how much can be controlled, but if legislators are able to enact something that would offer more protection, how would you say, what would the ideal legislation look like?
Europe has really set the bar pretty high for this. They've done a lot of research. Their legislation in Europe has done a lot of incredible research, and has done a really good job of understanding the impacts of a lot of these algorithms and how detrimental they can be to certain individuals' mental health. And one of the first things that they have done is to stop the infinite scrolling that we have here, where once you get on your device, there's no endpoint, right? We can get onto our Facebook feed and it is just continual scroll. There's never an end of feed. But in Europe, there is a end of feed. Like it is, you are no longer allowed to just continually scroll. They understand the impact of that. They understand that most people don't realize how much time they're spending on their device. So they've actually built into the legislation, the very things we talked about in this presentation, built-in limitations and built-in boundaries. Also, they have legislation around who can specifically market on social media apps to users and the age groups of those users, much like we dealt with here with cigarette companies marketing to young people or vaping marketing to young people. That is also very dangerous. So, for example, young people, or frankly, anybody having access to, groups that tend to promote unhealthy habits. There's a lot of limitations around that, 21 and up only, those kind of things. That's a really great place to start. And the other thing that we didn't even get a chance to talk on, because it really kind of deserves its own presentation, is how the advent of AI has fundamentally shifted all of this again. And it relates to misinformation because AI has gotten to be so good that, much like I was sharing in the previous question, sharing with children of age, teenagers specifically, and young adults, how much they are being manipulated by these companies on their feed. The game changes again when you don't even know exactly when you're being manipulated. Much like we're dealing with now with misinformation, these things are one and the same. It's now more visual misinformation, and it looks so real. We see it a lot now. I just heard that there was a new feed or a new snapshot going across feeds that showed President Trump at a Steelers game. Is garnering a lot of attention, ended up being completely AI generated. But again, these things are all combined, and we have to teach about misinformation if we want people to learn how to spot it. We have to teach what to look for. And what AI has done is made that job a little bit more difficult. But frankly, we have to start somewhere. So I think that's always a really good recommendation.
Another question came in, is there any legislation on deck to address the social media issues in Vermont in January? I know there was last session and I don't believe it passed.
It didn't pass that. Yeah, it was so disappointing. I wish I had good news on that. That has been very slow to be a priority in the legislation in Vermont, sadly. Much like it has nationally. Frankly, it's been, I think unfortunately the people who are doing the legislation are not real keen on how big of an impact this is having on our young adults, or if they are, they don't really understand the technology behind it and are very slow to regulate. Sadly.
I guess we'll see if they I guess try to pass something again. I do know that VChip, their platform that they're working on for the next year or two has to do around social media use and kind of that arena. So maybe we'll see
mental health. Yeah, absolutely. With cyberbullying, I think there is some good laws on the books that are percolating, and there are some already in place. I don't know about Vermont specific, but I think everybody probably that's the issue that is most prevalent and well known is cyberbullying when it comes to digital protections, but very few other protections exist right now, and that's unfortunate. And there's truly no restrictions as far as like what the tech companies can do as far as curating their content. Sadly, it is yet another responsibility for the parents. So
if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Emmy. This was amazing information. I've learned so much, and I don't have a high tech user at home yet, but it makes me think that we really need to start working on this resiliency and the boundaries around social media or just screen time in general with a 6-year-old. So some amazing tips.
yes. You
Lots
can't
more to
start too
learn.
early. Can't start too early.
And I do look forward to the next 2 in this series. I feel like there's so much more valuable information to gain. And on that note, I just wanted to let everybody know that we do have many more interesting workshops coming up. There's 2 more in this digital wellness series. And you can find those details on our homepage of our website, vermontfamilynetwork.org, along with some links to the previously recorded ones. And just a reminder, we have tons of information on our website about getting connected, and connecting with us is easy. You can also follow us on Facebook or join our closed Facebook page if you are a parent. We have 2 closed groups, one for parents with children with disabilities and special health needs, and one for adults with adult children. You can also sign up for our monthly e-newsletter or check out our YouTube channel. We're here to help. So again, thank you so much, Emmy. We really appreciate all of this amazing information. And to our participants here, please connect with us by phone or email. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day.